Hello students, welcome to Unacademy platform. This platform provides daily life classes and then there are structured courses. You have live tests and quizzes, unlimited access on subscription. You can also download this very app, that is Unacademy learning app, and there also you will have structured classes, structured courses, live test quizzes and everything. This is about me and this is my Telegram link and this is my Unacademy profile link. So if you face any doubt, any question on my lectures, on my discussions, you can just ping me here. You can ask me any question. Along with me, these are the top educators that we have on Unacademy. So you can go and visit those courses also offered by these educators. There are different plans to subscribe. So for example, if you go with Plus, you have live classes, test series, unlimited practice and structured schedule. If you choose Iconic, you also have personal coach, daily mains question answer practice, study planner and personalized feedback. Okay, and these are the different plans of different durations. All these are available at 10% discount if you apply this very code, that is Amit PS. Okay, again these are different plans for different durations. You can select according to your choice, according to your requirement, according to your need. And again these are available at 10% discount if you apply this very code, that is Amit PS. Okay, so today we are going to discuss again the editorial. What I plan to do is that I select the best editorial, the most informative one, uh, uh, which it is not going to be just the Hindu newspaper. I'll make sure that I cover Hindu, Indian Express, and Business Standard. Okay, and the best editorial that is going to be most informative, I'll make that the part of my discussion on editorial. Okay, so today what I have selected is this article by Suhasini Haida. So you must have seen Suhasini Haida writing on foreign policy issues. So this is actually focusing on the recent election that took place in USA, and this very election has been remarkable for various reasons. Although the time when Suhasini Haida is writing, the results are not yet announced, but now when we are discussing it, we know that Biden has conclusively won the election in his favor. Okay, so this very editorial is actually focusing on things uh, about the change that is likely to happen with new leader coming into power and the continuities. Okay, so what are the changes that are going to happen, and what are the continuities that we can actually expect? In every article that I'm going to take, I will highlight the relevant part so that you don't waste time in reading other part. But this article was so important or so informative, if I consider the importance of the topic that we have in our hand here, then it almost covers the highlighted part is actually covering the whole 90% almost of the article. So for that sense, the purpose that actually I highlight is not fulfilled. So you have to read actually the whole article, but that will be worth it because it is really informative. Okay. Now we are not just going to see the changes and continuities that are expected uh, with Biden coming to power, but we are also going to contextualize our discussion by keeping India, okay, as the focus here. So how the things are going to be, how the things will turn out for India, that is again very important for us. Getting it? So we are doing analysis of this very event, keeping India at the center. Okay. Now, in the very outset itself, I want to make it clear that you must be knowing that there are two parties in USA. First is Democratic and the second is Republican. Okay, now Trump, Donald Trump belonged to Republican Party. Before that, the president was Obama, Barack Obama. He belonged to Democratic Party. And Biden, who has defeated election in this very election, also belongs to Democratic Party. So you have seen Republican Party coming to the power, okay, by defeating Democratic Party. That happened in the year 2016 when Donald Trump became the prime president. And then we again saw that a Democratic candidate, that is Biden, has defeated Republican candidate, that is Donald Trump, and came to power. So you can see that Obama in Obama administration that actually belonged to Democratic Party. Okay, before Obama there was Bush, he belonged to Republican Party. Then after Obama we have seen Trump, who belonged to Republican Party, and again Biden. So it is Republican, Democratic, Republican, Democratic. That is the series that we have here. Now the thing that I want to make it clear before starting the discussion is this, that when you compare the policies of these two parties, that is first Democratic Party and the second Republican Party, when you analyze their policies by keeping India into focus, then we find that Republicans in some instances have been more favorable to those narratives, to those understandings which are going to favor India. So, for example, Republicans have never accepted the Chinese claim of peaceful rise of China. Okay, peaceful rise of China. So, this is actually a narrative that Chinese leadership has been promoting. But we all know that China's rise is not actually peaceful. China has been flexing its muscles, okay, right from the starting of this very century. Okay, so from the time when it started translating its economic power into military power, we have seen muscle flexing and militaristic as well as the aggressive foreign policy stances from Chinese leadership. So this China's rise is not actually peaceful. Okay, it is troubling all the neighbors that we have in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and South Asia. Okay, including India. So it is not at all a peaceful rise. Republicans have actually more realistic vision of international order, and in that realist vision, you will find that the states are actually the most basic units. Realists do not accord much primacy, much importance to international organizations, for example, the United Nations, okay, and other such groupings. They are of the view that the conflict among nations is actually inevitable. Getting it? So, realist view holds that conflict among nations is inevitable, that cannot be avoided. And that is why they have realist vision have actually suggested the leaders in USA that China should be considered as a serious threat for USA. And this particular notion, this particular understanding was well received by the Republican leaders and the Republican Party. But Democrats, on the other hand, were more willing to buy the narrative of the peaceful rise of China. Okay, in that sense, they were actually in favor of making cooperation or cooperative arrangements with China in such a way that China and USA could come together and work together. That was something which was always negated by realists, and that was something which was never acceptable to Republicans. In that sense, if you say that in context of China especially, and to some extent also Pakistan, Republican narrative or Republican view of these events has been more favorable to India. Because if USA does not buy the narrative of peaceful rise of China, in a way it is going to be something which is favorable to India. Because India does not only realize that there is no peaceful rise of China, India has actually witnessed or has been victimized or is actually a victim of the aggressive foreign policy postures adopted by Chinese leadership. Okay, so if United States, who has emerged in recent times one of the most trusted ally of India, is able to make some cooperative arrangements with China, that is not going to serve India's interest. Okay, but what Suhasini Heather is in her article seems to be saying is something which is opposite to the understanding that we already have with regard to the Democratic and Republican leaders. And Suhasini Heather is of the view that the policies which were proposed by Biden, okay, when under Obama administration, were not finally accepted by Obama, but were implemented by Donald Trump. In that sense, when Biden is coming to power, we can expect a kind of continuity in policies of USA with regard to India and also with regard to Southeast Asia, Pakistan, okay, USA's policy of Afghanistan, Pakistan region, and also towards this very region, that is South Asia, and China specifically. Okay, so let us see what she has got to say about it. Okay, so Swajni Adams says that in 2019 September, US President Barack Obama had tasked his Vice President Joseph Biden with building an alternative plan to Afghanistan to present to US generals who were pushing for the surge or influx of up to 4 lakh troops to win the war in Afghanistan. Okay, so in that very era, the military point of view, the point of view that was emerging from US general was such that they wanted to infuse more number of soldiers, more number of US soldiers, and soldiers which were working, the countries which were working with USA in order to control the terrorism in Afghanistan. Again, those numbers were actually planned to increase. It was planned that those numbers should be increased in Afghanistan to control the situation there. But that is something which actually did not happen. And Obama finally came out with another policy of infusing more number of soldiers there. So Mr. Biden fought long and hard, building on multiple visits to the region, and suggested that US did not need more troops. Okay, so although Obama, when came to power, actually came to power by one of the most famous promises that he made, that he is going to help in returning US troops to its home, that is America. Okay, and but that was something which did not become possible under his administration. Okay, although that was something which was being again advised time and again by Mr. Biden. The point here that Suhasini Hadar is making, that the Biden made a point which Obama did not heed, but was finally accepted by Trump. Okay, so Trump followed the same policy which Biden had suggested under Obama administration. Getting it? So in that sense, you can see a kind of continuity taking place because Trump was the president who implemented the policies suggested by Biden under Obama administration. Okay, so the details as recounted by veteran journalist Bob Woodward in his book Obama's Wars included a full focus on Al Qaeda, exiting other counterinsurgency missions, and dropping the Bush era nation building theme, reducing US bases to just two or three, and fighting the Taliban with a view to bringing them to the table for reconciliation. Okay, now understand that if you recall all the policies and the schemes of Trump administration, you would see that Trump was in favor, or Trump was of the view that the countries which have been traditionally under US umbrella, that is under US security cover, Trump wanted them to start depending on their own. So Trump actually wanted even countries like Japan and South Korea that either they develop their own defense system or they start paying US some amount which would be used by USA to safeguard their interest in the region. Getting it? But this very policy is actually is suggestive of the view which was held by Mr. Biden, and that is why Suhasini Hadar is saying that this particular view will be upheld by Biden again because this is coming from Biden when he was vice president. Okay. On Pakistan, a country that gave him one of the highest civilian honors, the Hilale Pakistan, Mr. Biden favored a policy of engagement in order to deal with Taliban. Okay, and this was something which was actually acceptable to Trump also. Getting it? Eventually, Mr. Obama did not go with the Biden plan and ended up with following the military's plan for a surge of about 33,000 extra troops instead. Okay, so what is being suggested here that something which was suggested by Biden was not followed by Obama, was actually followed by Donald Trump when he became the president. Okay, a decade later, it was President Donald Trump who picked up the idea similar to Biden plan when he ordered a large-scale pull-out of U.S. troops from Afghanistan. Okay, limited U.S. presence at bases and its mission in Afghanistan, while appointing Zalmi Khalilzad to build a reconciliation process with Taliban. All these measures, all these things were actually suggested by Biden himself, were rejected by Obama. While the relative merits of the different American strategies on Afghanistan will be judged in the future, what this shows is the specific policies of Mr. Biden and Trump in the international arena may not differ as much as their political styles and their ideologies do. Okay, so for example, what is being said that यहाँ पास ये कहा जा रहा है कि बिडेन और ट्रंप हालांकि दो अलग अलग पार्टीज से आते हैं, दो अलग अलग आइडियोलॉजीज को बिलोंग करते हैं, तब भी उनकी स्पेसिफिक पॉलिसीज में बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क नहीं है अगर हम बिडेन के द्वारा दिए गए उन सारे सजेशंस को देखें जो ओबामा एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन के टाइम में दिए गए थे। वही सजेशंस ओबामा एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ने मानने से इनकार कर दिया था और बाद में हम उसी तरह के सजेशंस से सिमिलर स्टेप्स ही डोनाल्ड ट्रंप को उनकी प्रेसिडेंसी के टाइम में लेते हुए देखा है हमने। ओके, और इसीलिए कहा जा रहा है कि उनकी पॉलिसीज में, स्पेशली इंटरनेशनल एरिना में, उनकी पॉलिसीज में फर्क नहीं है, तब भी जब वो डिफरेंट पॉलिटिकल स्टाइल्स को अडॉप्ट करते हैं और डिफरेंट आइडियोलॉजीज को बिलोंग करते हैं। ओके, अच्छा, अगर यहाँ पर आइडियोलॉजीज क्या है तो ये बात जान लेना जरूरी है कि आप जानते हैं कि यूएसए इज अ कैपिटलिस्ट कंट्री। ओके, बट इवन देन यू सी a kind of difference that exists between the ideology held by Democrats and the Republicans. Okay, both are in favor of capitalism only. But even then, Republicans उस स्पेक्ट्रम में अपने आप को कैपिटलिज्म के ज़्यादा करीब पाते हैं और बहुत सारी ऐसी पॉलिसीज जिसको सोशलिस्ट फीचर्स में काउंट किया जाएगा वो अडॉप्ट की गई है डेमोक्रेट्स के द्वारा। तो फॉर एग्जांपल ओबामा केयर की अगर बात करें, ओके, ये हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस वगैरह बहुत अच्छे इंश्योर करता है और ऑल दैट इज फंडेड बाय द गवर्नमेंट देयर, सो दैट यू वुड से इज द सोशलिस्ट फीचर being implemented by a government, okay, in a country which follows capitalist mode of production. Republicans are not in favor of those socialist policies. So in that sense, Republicans are more capitalistic than Democrats. This is one. Secondly, जब आप बात करते हैं रिलीजियस एक्सेप्टेंस की या रिलीजियस बेस्ड डिफरेंसेस को एक्सेप्ट करने की, Republicans have not been very willing to accept the difference, diversity of, they have not been willing or very much willing to accept the immigrants belonging to different societies, different ethnicities. तो आपने ट्रम्प को देखा होगा कि मैक्सिको वॉल की बात करते हैं, आपने देखा होगा कि मुस्लिम्स के ऊपर बैन लगाते, मुस्लिम कंट्रीज से आने वाले इमिग्रेंट्स के ऊपर बैन लगाते. All that actually is coming from the ideologies of the Republican. I am not denying the individual personality factor here. That was definitely a factor under Donald Trump, but that has been something which is found generally in Republican Party there. Okay, Democratic Party or the leaders belonging to the Democratic Party have been more willing and accommodative when it comes to ethnic differences and the immigration. Okay, तो इस तरह से आइडियोलॉजिकल डिफरेंस तो है. हालांकि तब जब यूएसए अपने आप में कैपिटलिस्ट कंट्री ही है और बोथ रिपब्लिकन एज वेल एज डेमोक्रेटिक दोनों कैपिटलिज्म को ही फेवर करते हैं, लेकिन तब भी डिफरेंसेस है. लेकिन यहाँ पॉइंट ये किया जा रहा है कि इन डिफरेंसेस के होने के बावजूद भी बिडेन और ट्रम्प के पॉलिसी में आपको बहुत ज़्यादा फर्क देखने को नहीं मिलेगा. ओके, तो वहां पास एक कंटिन्यूटी है. मतलब ये कहा जा रहा है कि बिडेन और ओबामा दोनों एक ही पार्टी के थे, लेकिन बिडेन ने जो सजेस्ट किया ओबामा ने वो नहीं किया, और बिडेन ने जो सजेस्ट किया बाद में हमने ट्रम्प को वो करते देखा है. तो ये डिफरेंस इज स्टार्ट इवन within the Democratic Party under Obama administration, and those very suggestions which were offered by Biden, we have seen in the policies which were adopted by Trump. And in that sense, that even though there is a difference between Trump and Biden when it comes to their political styles and ideologies, even then a kind of a continuity is expected if we compare the policies of Trump and the suggestions made by Biden under Obama administration. For India, this would mean some comfort in continuity as a Biden administration will show over the US policy with India, strategic and otherwise. Okay, ये जो पॉइंट मैंने आपको समझाया उसको यहाँ पास लिखा हुआ है. While Mr. Trump owned the Indo-Pacific policy letter, the policy owes its origin to Obama-Biden administration that first focused on Asia-Pacific in order to build a coalition to counter Chinese inroads in the region. Okay, as I said, that Democrats in USA, leaders from Democratic Party, have been more willing to buy the narrative of peaceful rise of China. Okay, मतलब उनको ये पीसफुल राइज ऑफ चाइना, हमारी तरफ से तो हम तो जानते हैं कि ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, पीसफुल राइज ऑफ चाइना करके ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. Okay, this is one narrative that Chinese leadership actually tried to establish, but that hasn't got established yet, and now the world at large actually knows that there is no peaceful rise of China. Chinese policies, its conduct with its neighbors have been very aggressive and militaristic. Okay, and that is why there is no peaceful rise of China. So although Democrats traditionally have been more willing to accept it, but Obama administration was not ready to accept this very policy or this very policy of peaceful rise of this very narrative of peaceful rise of China, and that was visible in many of the steps that were taken by him or that were taken under his administration in order to control and contain China. Okay, so in that sense also, the Democrats under Obama administration have not been very unfavorable to India, as has been the case with other leaders under Democratic Party before Obama. Okay, and here in this very point, it is also being claimed that the Indo-Pacific policy, where India becomes a very important factor in the strategic calculus in the field of Pacific, which is connected to Southeast Asia and East Asia. So instead of Pacific, okay, now USA is focusing on Indo-Pacific, and the significance of it is that India becomes part of that strategic calculus, okay, part of that very arena, which has always be in the center of attention for the policy makers in USA. Okay, it is also likely that Mr. Biden will build on the military foundational agreements with India. Okay, strengthen military cooperation, push the shield of US military hardware. Now, this is something which we have seen developing right from Obama administration, although it came to fruition under Trump administration. So, for example, there has been the signing of Lemoa, Comcasa, okay, and other foundational agreements. That is something that it is expected that Mr. Biden is going to build upon. What it means is that the defense partnership that has been strengthened under different leaders under between India and USA, those different that defense partnership is going to be strengthened under Mr. Biden. Okay, when it comes to trade, it is unlikely that Mr. Biden can dial back many of the measures that Mr. Trump has put into motion, and those actually deal with specifically the trade deal, although that hasn't become possible yet, but a kind of mini trade deal was in the offing, and that is something which is going to be favorable. Then there is a issue of generalized system of preferences that you must have already been knowing. Okay, this was in news in the starting months of this very year and also last year. Okay, and then strategic trade authorization, one category that was offered to India, and many other tax, for example, major defense partner status that was accorded to India, that actually made possible for India to acquire the weapons uh, from USA, which have the state of the art technology. In that sense, I would like to give one more information here is that USA has always been trying India, okay, or trying wooing India to buy more and more defense hardware from USA's companies, because traditionally USA and Russia have been enemies, okay, and Russia has always been the largest defense supplier for India. Now USA's companies or USA's policymakers are making an attempt to come out with an alternative of Russia for India's defense requirements. Okay, so that is something that Biden is going to build upon. On visas, yes, this was again very important issue. Okay, because this is something which is very important to India, because India has a large number of skilled workforce, and that is something which is going to be favorable to India if all those people are permitted to work in USA. So they will get the employment, and then they will be remitting the money to India, and all that is going to be very useful for economic development in India. Okay, so Mr. Biden gave Indian American some assurances at a campaign speech last month, and he already has an in-house understanding of the value of Indian immigrants to the US. Because that is something that it shows that Biden is of the view that the immigrants in USA from India have actually benefited USA's economy also. So it is not just about India's interest which is involved here. If US becomes more accommodative with respect to India's immigrants, then it is also going to be benefited economically along with India. Then there are certain friction areas, and that is why Suhasini Heather is trying to point out certain points there which might be frictional. Okay, so where there is likely to be some friction with Modi government, especially given India's so I'm sorry, pending review by the US Commission on International Religious Freedom, is where Democratic Party leadership, including Mr. Harris, Mark Warner, Pramila Jayapal, have been particularly vocal, and these are Jammu Kashmir, the Citizenship Amendment Act, communal and caste-based violence, actions against non-governmental organizations, and media freedoms. Okay, see, in these areas, you have seen even Obama administration being very vocal in coming out with statements which actually sanction India. Okay, now those kind of things has actually not happened in under Trump administration. Getting it? मतलब ये है कि रिलीजियस टॉलरेंस में या कोई वायलेंस में जो इंडिया में हुआ, उसमें हमने ओबामा के एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में बड़े से बड़े लीडर्स की लेवल में, फॉर एग्जांपल इवन ओबामा हिमसेल्फ, उनकी तरफ से भी स्टेटमेंट्स आए कि इंडिया को टॉलरेंस की तरफ ध्यान देना चाहिए, ये तमाम सब कुछ। अच्छा, ये चीज़ें हम जानते हैं कि हमारे यहाँ पॉलिटिकल ज़्यादा है और उनमें उनके केसेस में सब्सटेंस कम है। हाँ, हमारे यहाँ कास्ट को लेके, रिलीजन को लेके इशूज़ हैं, लेकिन ऐसे इशूज़ दुनिया की हर कंट्री में एग्जिस्ट करते हैं, खास करके तब जब वो एक मल्टी रिलीजियस और मल्टी एथनिक कंट्री हो। हमने यूएसए के केस में भी ब्लैक्स वर्सेस वाइट्स के केसेस को होते देखे हैं। हमने वहाँ भी मुस्लिम्स के केसेस में एक्सक्लूजन या एक्सक्लूसिविस्ट पॉलिसी और एजेंडा, उसके उस तरह के एटीट्यूड को देखा है। तो ऐसा कुछ अगर हमारी हमारी कंट्री में होता है जो एक एक्सेप्शंस की तरह है, और उसमें यूएसए की लीडरशिप की तरफ से स्टेटमेंट आते हैं ऐसा कि जैसे वो हमें लेसन्स दे रहे हो, तो वो एक सैंक्शनिंग होगा, वो एक सैंक्शन करना होगा इंडिया को। और ये हमने डेमोक्रेटिक लीडर्स में देखा है, और यही चीज़ रिपब्लिकन लीडर्स में, स्पेशली अंडर ट्रम्प एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, दैट वाज एब्सेंट। तो उस सेंस में ट्रम्प एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन हमारे लिए फेवरेबल था। अब क्योंकि डेमोक्रेटिक पार्टी लीडरशिप में हमने पहले ये देखा है, तब हो सकता है कि हमें ये प्रॉब्लम। लेकिन सुहासिनी हैदर आगे कह रही हैं कि ये प्रॉब्लम होने की भी बहुत कम संभावना है, क्योंकि बिडेन इज ऑलरेडी अ काइंड ऑफ फैन ऑफ इंडियाज मल्टी एथनिक, मल्टी रिलीजियस सोसाइटी, and he has acknowledged that we are actually doing very good when it comes to arranging or accommodating different ethnicities and different religions or different cultures in our country. And that was evident from Biden's speech, okay, where he admired India. So this was actually a speech in 2013 where Biden visited Mumbai, and he made this very speech where he appreciated India, admired India. And what he actually said is mentioned here. This is something that can be used by you if you are, especially if you are PSIR student, then this can be used, okay, can be coded in your exam in order to support your viewpoint that Biden's uh, view towards India is not that different, okay, as you would expect from any leader from Democratic Party, or as some might be very apprehensive of, because under Trump administration he was very comfortable because Trump himself, President Trump and other leaders did not make any such statements which would sanction India with regard to its policy of communal violence, or any policy that is going to affect the large population belonging to different ethnicities and culture here. Okay, we had what he said is mentioned here. He said, I quote, "We admire the way you have modeled ethnicities, faiths, and tongues into a single proud nation. The way entrepreneurship seems almost hardwired into Indian society, from rickshawalas to web programmers. And maybe most of all, we admire your democracy." Okay, and the message that your democracy sends to people everywhere in the world. See, again, understand, I would like to point out one very important factor, that what brought India and US together since the beginning of the years of the last decade of the last century, that is from 1990s, or the initial years of 1990s, one of the most important factor was people to people contact. Okay, so we have a large Indian diaspora in USA, and that diaspora actually is very effective, very influential, enjoys a lot of clout in politics and business in USA, and it is through those communities or those section of population the two countries actually started coming together, especially after 1990s. Okay, and you would recall that this period, the initial years of this very period, actually coincides with a very major event that took place at international level. That was the disintegration of USSR. Okay, India was left with Russia, who was not willing to cooperate with India to the extent that we have seen between India and USSR in the decades of 70s and 80s. Okay, now why Russia was not willing to cooperate India to that extent? There are various reasons behind it. One very important reason is that Russia itself was not very strong after the disintegration of USSR. Secondly, Russia itself wanted the backing and support of North American and Western European countries for its development, and for that it actually required the support of USA, although something that was not offered in the whole decade of 1990s. And that is why when you see that when Putin comes into power, he is not going to expect the help from Western Europe and North America, and especially USA, and is going to adopt a foreign policy posture that is going to cast some threat to the Western Europe and is going to be challenging for USA. Keeping that debate aside, my point here is this, that the things or the various things which made possible for these two countries, that is USA and India, to come closer for various kinds of cooperation, one very important factor there was the people to people contact. But second very important factor is that we share certain common values, and those values are actually related to the uh, things like democracy. Okay, then our mutual concerns for human rights, then in various occasions our stand for free international trade or a global order which is based on free international trade. We also are one with each other when it comes to rule-based global order. We are in favor of that. And there you saw another kind of symphony and another kind of similarity between and Indian values and American values. And foremost among them is democracy. You would be knowing that India is called the largest democracy in the world, and USA is called the oldest democracy in the world. Okay, so that kind of actually similarity that we see in case of values between these two countries is being highlighted by Biden in this very statement that he made in his speech. Okay, and here what Suhasini Hadar is trying to say is this, that because of such perception that Biden has with respect to India, then it is expected that Biden is actually going to cooperate with India. Okay, because he already appreciates India for its democratic values, okay, for its attempt, for its success in bringing about a kind of society where multi-ethnic, where different ethnicities and different people with different religious views are able to live together, okay, as a common proud nation. Biden is also appreciative of India's entrepreneurial spirit, okay, that is visible according to him in from rickshawalas to the wave programs. And because of these perceptions, it is expected that Biden is going to come to India for a very close cooperation, both on those fronts which are useful for domestic agenda that we have in our case, that is removal of poverty, increasing employment opportunities and all, and also the international arena or international agenda where India is trying to safeguard its interests, which are being threatened by countries in our neighborhood, especially China and also Pakistan. International outlook. Here you can see that above all, Biden's foreign policy will be watched for just how much he reverses Mr. Trump's pullout from multilateral world order. Okay, so we have seen that Trump administration or President Trump was not willing to keep or to uh, give US stakes to fulfill certain agenda of international order which is based on free trade. So Trump was not willing to put USA's stakes in making a rule-based international order or international trade which is based on free and fair trade practices. So that is why we have seen that Trump pulling out himself from various multilateral order. Okay, sometimes even threatening to come out from UN. Okay, and there have been certain examples also. For example, World World Health Organization, then UNESCO and Human Rights Council. Okay, and then you must be knowing about the Paris Climate Deal. That is something which was not acceptable to Trump. So in that sense, all those policies, we have seen that people under Trump administration itself were not willing to cooperate with President Trump. And now, when Mr. Biden comes to power here, it is expected, or at least he will be watched, that how much he is going to roll back all that was done on these fronts by Trump administration. Okay, he will also be watched for what concrete measures he takes in order to strengthen the rule-based international order and to ensure the countries that flawed it most. Okay, rule-based international order means everything is taking place according to the rules set among the countries, especially in forums like United Nations or its other organizations, other organs, for example, United Nations General Assembly, and also United Nations Security Council. Okay, and other forums. It also gets related to international trade system or the global trade and finance system that we have, which is based on the functioning of the Bretton Woods twins, that is IMF and World Bank. Okay, so we in under Trump administration we have seen a kind of reversal taking place from this very on this very front, and that is why it is expected that Biden is going to make some corrections here in this very regard. So this was all about this very discussion that we had regarding the editorial that appeared in the Hindi newspaper. It was a leader article by Suhasini Haider. Okay, if you like the video and if you are willing to subscribe for any plan in Unacademy, you should remember that all those plans are available at 10% discount. You apply this very code, that is Amit PS. Thank you very much.